Today, it's time to ask yourself what you believe. Hello and welcome to Rotted Review of the Day, and today I am taking a look at the 2018 movie Demon House. If you're familiar with the personality Zak Bagans, then you are familiar with him as the host of Ghost Adventures, a paranormal investigation show on the Travel Channel. In this case, he has decided to purchase a house that was in the news as being infested with ghosts and spirits and hauntings and demons and so on. And a family vacated it. It made the local news. He purchased it and then went there and had the ultimate paranormal investigation experience and documented it along the way. Now, this is particularly difficult for me to tackle on a review level, strictly because of the inherent nature of the content. This is framed as a documentary, but there has to be some presupposition going on for the audience members. I mean, basically, the questions you have to ask yourself in descending order, and if the answer to any of these is no, then you have to accept it as fiction. Do you believe in the paranormal, demons in particular? Do you believe that the paranormal can have physical effects on human beings? Do you believe that the paranormal can have physical effects on technical equipment? Do you believe in Zak Bagans' methods and claims? And do you believe that Zak Bagans would never compromise his integrity to make money? If you manage to get through all of those with still yes, then it's a documentary, and we have to go on from there. But how do I approach it from a review standpoint? Ultimately, where I landed on this one is I'm going to keep my opinions to myself for right now. I don't know if I will release them. Maybe I will even by the end of this video. I don't know. I'm just kind of playing this off the cuff here. But I am going to review this as it was presented to us, which is a factual documentary. So even the categories, which I'll go ahead and throw up there right now, need to get altered a bit because the presupposition of the categories is that I'm dealing with a fictional movie, plot, acting, and so on and so forth. So I'm going to go ahead and adjust them. They're still going to have the same equal point value of 25 per for a total of 100. But the plot, I'm going to change to just I'm going to try and keep the spirit encapsulated about the same. So the plot, I'm making the premise, the intent, I'm making the content, and the acting, I'm making the interviews. So the plot, I've already kind of basically described the premise of the film here. The buys the house. But the one thing that really isn't really established too well, and why I only gave it a 10 out of 25, is it never really firmly establishes what the premise of the film is, what the goal is, what they're trying to establish. He buys the house. Why? To investigate. Why? To what end? To clean the house? To prove the existence of the paranormal world? And then going about it, it just doesn't seem... when I think of a documentary, I think a bit of the scientific method where, you have your hypothesis and then, you base what you were experimenting based on that. And then you let the results stand on its own, whether or not it supports the hypothesis. In this one, I just never really got a sense of what the hypothesis was. I know that he bought the house, and that's about it. He let the cameras roll. He did a lot of interviews of the former occupants of the house, tracing it back to anybody that stepped foot in there over the last several years, and trying to tail them down. Interview them, and then ultimately ending with him locking himself in the house to spur on the investigation. If you're expecting this to be like an elongated episode of Ghost Adventures, it's really not. It has the same kind of spirit and vibe to it, but they don't really... Zak doesn't really go on an investigative measure of this one in its entirety. It doesn't go through with a ton of equipment and kind of hash over things and walk through things. And, this is a lot more interviews and a lot less, dude, bro. So, it's not the Ghost Adventures you might be expecting. But regardless, it is Zak Doing this for what reason, I don't really know. So again, 10 out of 25 on the premise. The content, I gave a 7 out of 25. This film, reviewing it as a documentary, one of the biggest failings of it is that it was suffering from an extraordinary lack of objectivity. It kind of follows the scientific method there. You have your hypothesis, and you have, you do your experiments, and, your conclusion may or may not support the hypothesis. But this really should have handed over the directorial and production reins to a third party, an outside entity with no stake in the conclusion. One of the best examples of a documentary I can think of is Weiner, that followed Anthony Weiner as a candidate running for governor of New York, I believe it was, and then more accusations start piling on top of him, and you get to see him with black eyes, politically, and the cameras don't stop rolling, and he doesn't stop being engaged in it. And if he had directorial reins over it, you could definitely see that it would not have come to the same place in the documentary. One of the best things about the documentary was that it showed the good and the bad. And this movie really seems to only show what Zack wants it to show. And that is really difficult for me to judge as an objective documentary. There were a lot of voiceovers, a lot of reenactments, and a severe lack of follow-through. There were claims made about health issues in particular that would have been very easy to follow through with. Take a camera, get doctor's consent, get patient's consent, and just do a simple interview, or show them, Zack in particular, he's never made it, it's not really a spoiler for the movie. He's been fairly open about it, but he now has to wear prism glasses because of something that happened to his eyes within the context of the film here, and that has affected him for the rest of his life. How difficult would it have been for him to take a camera crew and followed him to the optometrist? It just seemed like there was a lack of follow through. Like I said, I'm going to repeat myself on that one if I continue on. But regardless, as a documentary, it just wasn't objective, and I can't really grade it too much on the content from there. The interviews, I gave an 8 out of 25. Ultimately, most of them really led nowhere, and the only interesting one that I can really think of described an event and then put people in the room having witnessed the event and then tracked those people down. Honestly, that's how it should be done, and it was fairly convincing. But that was about the only point in the movie that I think was done well from an interview standpoint. Everything else was simply conjecture and opinion and retelling of facts from people that have shown to possibly not have been truthful or objective. There really wasn't a balance in play there. Whatever narrative they were trying to speak to, it wasn't very, the interviews did not serve them well. And the technical I'm leaving alone as a technical category because technical is technical. And I really want nothing special or out of the ordinary about the technical portions of this film with the editing or the camera work or anything of the line. So I gave it an 11 out of 25, which gives us a total of 36 out of 100 points. Here's the thing. I really am kind of going off the cuff here. But I've said this before on the channel, and I tend to subscribe to it, is Carl Sagan's quote about extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence. And there are portions of this movie that I call into question. Cameras going squiffy seconds before anything showing up on the screen to the point where nothing of value was showing on the screen. Like I said, the lack of follow-through. It would have been very easy to take camera crews and continue on just one step further to prove, or at least provide some support to the verbal accounts. A lot of this movie was just verbal accounts and opinions and people that the movie even showed that there were some debunking going on. So, who do we believe? The cops won't go in there. They know the house. They don't go in there. They don't want to. Well, how do we know that they're telling the truth? They're just speaking off the, they're just speaking from their opinion. And that's not necessarily the basis of a factual documentary. And ultimately, I think where I really landed with this one more than anything else is with Occam's razor, which, the more assumptions you make, the more unlikely an explanation. And if a simpler explanation is in play that has the same results, then that would be the logical one to pursue. So, do demonic entities exist within our world, inhabiting that house, which afflicts some people that step into it, but not all, in life-altering ways, causing a family to flee, having an altruistic paranormal investigator purchase it for the purposes of shedding light on the parapsychological truth, and in turn becoming physically assaulted to the point where he threw in the towel and tears the house down? Or does a reality TV host want to make money? And with that, I'll wrap up my review of 2018's Demon House, and I really thank you for joining me here today. I look forward to seeing you tomorrow, and remember, next time you want to watch a horror movie, first make sure that it's good and rotted.